My name is Briana Desadier, and this is my lesson on phonemic awareness. My objective is to isolate and pronounce initial, medial, vowel, and final sounds in spoken syllable words. For my review, I'm going to review how to orally produce words by blending phonemes using the "if you think you know this word" jingle, and it goes to the beat to "if you're happy and you know it." So the words that I would use would just be simple words like sun, dog, and can. And basically the jingle goes, if you think you know this word, shout it out. If you think you know this word, shout it out. If you think this you know this word, then tell me what you've heard. If you think you know this word, shout it out. And then you would sound out the word like sun. You would sound it out slowly. So you go s, and then the whole class would shout out the word. So again, you could do that with just 3 words like sun, dog, and can. So the questions that I have to go with that review are, now let's sound out a word together. Everyone sound out the word sit. So myself and the whole entire class would sound out sit. Sit. Then I would see if they could sound out a word without my help. So I said, let's see if you can sound out a word without my help. Can we sound out the word bat? So I would expect the class to sound out together, bat. And then we will try a harder word. So how about a harder word? Let's sound out tree together. And then they would have to sound out a constant blend word, which that would be tree. Tree. My purpose and importance is to prepare students to master the concepts of phonics in order to correctly spell and read. Last week we learned how to blend sounds together to create a word, and then today we are going to learn how to isolate and pronounce sounds in a word. I figure that we'll probably continue this lesson on into tomorrow because it is somewhat complicated because you're learning initial, medial, vowel, and last sounds. And again, our objective is to be able to isolate and pronounce initial, medial, vowel, and final sounds in spoken syllable words. Our motivation is going to be a game called Dog's Letter Pick, and we would play this on the smartboard. So this is a game from PBS Kids.
Dog's Letter Pit. Click on dog to make him jump into the letter pit and splash letters.
So we're going to click on the dog, and then it pops up all of these letters.
Nice splash, dog. Dog wants to build the word sub. What letter makes the s
So we're
sound?
building words, and we aren't including letters, but it also talks about sounds and
right.
blending sounds
What
spoken
letter
words. So
makes
I
the
figured
uh
it would be a good
sound?
motivation. So they would pick U.
Good job. What letter makes the b sound?
And then B makes the bus sound.
That's right.
So then they have the word.
B. Click on dog to make him jump into the
And
letter pit.
I would show them how to do it, and then pick a couple of students to come up to the smartboard and actually do it. But with the help of the rest of the class, they would have to ask the class, what sound do you think it is? And let the whole class participate, but have one person doing the work on the smartboard. So our procedures, the first activity we're going to do is called the last sound is, and it is made for the last sound, but we're going to be using it for the first, middle, and the last sound of the words. So as you see, I have all these random objects, and you're going to present all of these objects on a table in front of the classroom so that the whole class can see them. And the object of the game is to pick a word of one of the objects and keep it in your head, and you're only going to say the initial, the middle, or the last sound of the object, and you have to state what sound it is. So let's say if I chose banana in my head, I wouldn't say it's banana. I would just say the initial sound is B. And they would have to look at the objects and try to figure out which object has the first sound that sounds like B. Well, of course, it would be banana. So they would have to pick up the object and say banana, B, and they would get it correct. I think this is a good activity that you could do with the whole class, as if the whole class can see the objects on the table, then they should be able to participate. So I would show them an example, and then I would let every student come and participate at the table if enough time was allowed. Our next activity is going to be an activity, there's actually a game, and it's called Move and Tell. So for this game, you would need this game board. So this is what one game board is. It would be ideal to have maybe about 4 or 5 of these laminated, and they could play in groups of 4 or 5. I am using these little fuzzy balls for game pieces. So instead of actually hard pieces that they're probably going to lose, just grab these, and they will all begin on start right here, and they will have some die or number cubes, and just roll them. Whatever number pops up is how many spaces that they move. So we probably just want to use one number cube, and it picked up 6. So they would move their piece 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they landed on a piece of pie. So for the first round of the game, they would pronounce the initial sound. So if they landed on pie, the initial sound would be P. If they get it correct, they get to stay in their place. If they get the sound wrong, they have to go all the way back to start. And I would let everybody get to the end and then play it again, sounding out the middle sound, and then play it again, sounding out the last sound. So for the closure, we would go back to our random object activity and probably choose around 3 objects. So let's just say I chose the seal, the duck, and the orange. And we would actually sound out the initial, middle, and last sounds of each object. So if I picked up the duck, you would sound out duck as a whole class together. If we did seal, you would sound out s-il together. And then the same thing with the orange, and that would be our closure, just to kind of review what we started with and wrapping it all together. For my questions, my first question would be, my first name is Briana. What is the middle sound of my first name? And so if they sounded it out to themselves, they would hear Bri and So the middle sound would be and. And of course they would tell me that either raising their hands or they would just shout it out together. And then I would ask, what is another word that has the same middle sound as my name? And they could use like one of our random objects, banana, banana. So that might take a little thinking, but it gets their minds working for our homework activity. So our homework activity would be for them to go home and identify the initial and last sound of their first name. And then they would have to come up with something that has the same first sound as their first name and the same last sound as their first name, and write it down on a piece of paper that I would send home with them, explaining the directions so their parents could help them. My early finishers will complete the worksheet on matching objects that looks like this, with the same initial sounds. So right here we have a goat, and then on the other side of the line we have a guitar and a nest. So which objects have the same initial sound? Goat and guitar, or goat and nest? Well, goat and guitar have the same initial sound, so they would circle the guitar, and then they would do that for all 4 examples And after they finish circling the matching sounds, they could color the worksheet to pass by more time. My special needs students, I would assume that there would be a paraprofessional in the classroom with me, but if there's not, then this is something that I could do when I have all the other kids busy doing something else. But the student with a reading disability will work with the paraprofessional or myself on correctly pronouncing initial, medial, vowel, and last sounds of the objects used in the first activity. So we would actually go through each object over here and sound out all the sounds so that they correctly know how to sound out sounds of words, and they have a bunch of practice with all of these objects. The student who is an English language learner will work one-on-one with myself or a paraprofessional to distinguish the sounds within the words of the objects and correctly pronounce each sound. So we would kind of do the same thing as the ones with a reading disability, just more so focusing on how to pronounce the sounds and not really remembering what the sounds are, but how someone would pronounce the sounds in an English accent rather than their home accent. For remediation, when free time is available, students who need extra practice will play the Move and Tell board game to help further their understanding with the help of a paraprofessional or myself. So they could take this board game here and play a couple of rounds of it with the help of an adult supervising to make sure that they're pronouncing all the sounds correctly. And this is more so of a game environment and not so much as just extra worksheets and really working their brains. This is fun, this is interactive, this is something that they can learn through but also play, and so the extra help will be more interesting to them and they won't mind it so much. For enrichment, the learner will complete a worksheet that requires them to determine the initial sound of each picture and match it to another picture that has the same initial sound. So here's the worksheet right here, and our first example is a wig, and it has a line drawn to a whale. So they would have to draw a line to the object that has the same initial sound. And then for the actual enrichment part of it, I would ask them to give an example beside each picture of another object that has the same initial sound. And then they could also color it if they had enough time, but I'm hoping that they would be so involved with all of our other activities that they won't have time to color this. They might have time to complete it, but not color it. And then for their comments, I don't have any. So our objectives for the learners would be to identify initial, medial, vowel, and last sounds in words with 90% accuracy, and I believe that that is remembering, because if they can remember how to find the initial, the medial, vowel, and the last sounds in the words, then they can correctly identify them. So that is all I have for phonemic awareness, and I will see you next week.